Hi, my name is Marlysa Raye-Jacobus, and I'm a North Fulton Master Gardener in Fulton County. We're in North Fulton, and I've been a Master Gardener for about 25 years now. Started out in Columbus, Ohio, and when I transferred and moved here, I became the first transfer in North Fulton. I love giving talks, and this is our best way of doing our talks now and our presentations. So here I go. My topic is on winter interest plants. And I have done this talk many times before, but never in front of an audience of a computer. So I just want to give you that knowledge ahead of time. To me, it's a very interesting topic. The question is, why do we need winter interest plants? Well, you can see I'm dressed up, wearing my winter clothes, and it isn't winter right now. It's a beautiful fall day, but winter is very important because of the fact that we need 4-season plants. So I'm going to take off my winter clothes so you have an idea, and I'll save them for the actual winter time, mittens, gloves, and hats, and begin my talk. And I'll be putting on my North Fulton Master Gardener apron, just to show you that I'm truly a Master Gardener in North Fulton. This is our instead of using t-shirts, we have aprons. So here we go. It's not moving. Here we go. I just told you my introduction, and so here we go again. I did play in the dirt for a long, long time since I was a kid. I was sort of forced to become the gardener in the family because my mom and dad were super busy. And so we've had many, many houses, and we moved here back in 1997. I love the Atlanta area because of the fact that you do have 4 distinct seasons. Let me fix my hair, by the way. Here is the agenda for our winter interest plants. And we're going to talk first about why do we want winter interest plants in our landscape. Go to this. Well, there's several different reasons that we do, but remember that there are challenges and rewards to this. And we're going to talk about that. I think the rewards outshine the challenges, to tell you the truth. Simply put, winter interest plants provide structure for all the 4 definitive seasons that we have in Georgia. And aren't we lucky to have 4 definitive seasons? I'm not sure I would be able to handle living in California or Arizona or even Florida because they don't have that type of environment on an annual basis. Winter affords you to recognize those bones in your landscape, and the placement of your beds and plants will carry through all the 4 seasons. The rest of the agenda we're going to go through, and I will quickly run through that with you. It's about planning for winter interest landscapes. There's a definition of the 4-season plants as well. And part of the whole shebang about winter interest plants is to provide structure in your garden. It's very important when you're designing and organizing what you want to have in your yard to not just throw things here and there, but to have some sort of definitive design or thought in mind ahead of time. And including a 4-season plant here and there is a wonderful, important idea. We will be talking about a handful of plants for winter interest. I'm only providing about half of that amount of different types of plants because of the sake of brevity and for the sake of the time element. I don't want this to be longer than an hour and bore you to tears. But we will be talking about trees, shrubs, evergreens, perennials, and ground covers mostly. I decided to hold off on bulbs, and maybe there will be a winter interest plants part 2 coming up by next year. Winter interest plants also help the environment by an aesthetic standpoint. They provide peace, they provide serenity, they provide beauty most of all. And I think in this day and age, we really are looking for that. Going outside is so important for your well-being. I will be discussing in detail 1 or 2 of the slides about the exfoliating tree barks, different berries, seed pods, nuts, and fruits, and the different colors and forms that you find in the wintertime. Very, very important because it adds very different interest and your eye goes towards that as a focal point. And one of the last things that I will be discussing, which I think is very important because we are losing this slowly but surely in our in the state of Georgia, the topic of birds. Birds in the winter garden is very important because of the fact that we need to save our birds. We need to keep our birds surviving. Many birds don't migrate in the state of Georgia because it's warm enough for them or they've been able to tolerate for many years. So due to that time commitment, we're not going to include the other items, the perennial vines, the winter containers, ornamental grass, vegetable gardens, herbs, ferns, or winter annuals. My first item that I love is Rosemary Raye's quote that I've came up with a long time ago when I started this topic. And it is, winter's beauty is clear and spare, much different from other seasons. Now, if you don't know who Rosemary Raye is, she was a widely acclaimed English garden designer. And I believe she died in the early 2000s. She was very well versed. She's written many books, and she's collaborated with many other people, other landscape architects, and her recognition is international rather than just national. She's a very interesting person. I encourage you to look her up on Google. And winter's beauty has to do with three different areas, three different elements: planning for the winter season, preparing the garden after the first frost, and designing the Georgia winter garden. If you'll notice on this picture, we have a combination of all different features, and that is a beautiful winter garden. It's also a beautiful summer garden as well. This picture was probably taken in the winter time, and it incorporates different elements such as foliage, such as color, such as structure, such as hard surfaces like the rock wall, and wonderful texture. Texture is really evident in this picture. Fall is for planting. So you have to remember that planning is very important too. I'm going to go backwards one, go back to this. Planning for the winter season is key before you do any planting. You just can't plunk plants in there and hope that it'll look all right. You have to really think it through. Every landscape design class or lecture that I've ever attended states that your landscape needs 4-season plants. And I'm here to point out that specific plants can provide 4 seasons of change in their appearance, possible flowers, and still offer appeal in their location. It may be a challenge, as I said before, but the rewards are worth the effort. The key to having that 4-season property is good planning. Winter features will need to be visible from a distance. Be aware of that when you won't be walking out in your winter garden as often as you do in the other 3 seasons. And from different vantage points inside your home, look through the inside, from the inside of your home outward and see what you see. Make a little square if you want to. Or take some pictures. Thank goodness for our phones. It will come in very handy. But take advantage when designing to include natural features such as the rock outcropping that we see here, the rock wall. It's beautiful, and it provides a focal point and an opportunity for plants that are more shallow to grow on top. Focal interest is the key factor. Now we're going to talk about preparing the garden as well. And I'm going to go to the next slide about fall is for planting. So before any ice or snowstorms arrive, the smart gardeners have already cut down or removed their summer annuals, cleared their beds of most leaf piles, and added new mulch. Fall should be your busiest season. I can't emphasize that enough. Much more busy than springtime, believe it or not. It is the best time to transplant perennials and plant your newly acquired shrubs and spring blooming bulbs. That's the time that you should be planting the most amount of plants. Otherwise, you're going to have to babysit them terribly if you plant in the spring and into the early summer. However, trees, just be aware, trees, whether they're deciduous or evergreen, should only be planted between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day during their dormant phase. They don't mind being plunked in cold soil. It will not be frozen because here in Georgia, we do not get frozen soil. Our southern temperate climate offers us the luxury of being able to dig in that dirt year round and work outside. To me, in January, it's wonderful to go outside semi-bundled up or layered and just rake, if nothing else, and just see the beauty of what your winter gardens look like. I happen to have a good handful of plants that are in bloom in January. I have on the slide, it says fall is for planting, and that means September through November. There are cooler temperatures, less insects, so that means also that there's less pests and disease problems. There's usually more rainfall between September through December, and it gives the plant a time for roots to establish before the winter. Okay, bear in mind one more time, trees should wait until at least Thanksgiving for you to plant them. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it's one thing that I tell people all the time, that dogwoods should only be planted in January in order for them to be successful. Didn't know that. There are many winter colors. Whoops, go back one. There are many winter colors too, and even flowers that bloom during the Georgia winter. Brown is a color, and we're going to go to the next one because you see a lot of brown here. These are fall leaves, and there's lots of brown all the way around in the wintertime. But we can offer so many other colors, such as Lenten roses, Camellia japonica, red and yellow twig dogwood, flowering rosemary, and the winter veggie garden. I believe I have a picture of that. There we are. Here's the winter colors. I'm advancing a little bit. Up in the left-hand corner are camellias. The middle one at the top are Lenten roses. And look at the variety of beautiful colors of maroon and cream and white and green. Gorgeous. To the upper right are yellow twig dogwoods. The middle is our red twig dogwoods, and they are shrubs, not regular trees. They'll never become trees. To the left, far left on the bottom are rosemaries, regular Rosemary officinalis that is in bloom, and rosemary actually blooms from September through April, believe it or not. And sometimes if you chop it back by April, it will bloom again during the summer sporadically. And the bottom right, and unfortunately we won't have a chance to talk about vegetable gardens. Vegetable gardens are so much fun in the wintertime, especially in our area within the state of Georgia, because they are very viable. There's lots of winter crops to take advantage of. Let me go back one so we can talk about, there we go. There's the fall planting and designing. I thought this was a great picture. The only thing that this person hasn't done yet is chop through some of those roots. They've dug a hole in good quality soil, and they're ready to plant a shrub. It looks like it's a japonica, something in the japonica family. Anyway, it's a great plant, and they've done a very good job with their digging. So just remember, fall is for planting and preparing for the winter time, not springtime, fall. So it's a whole different mindset that we're looking into. And preparing your garden for winter with this picture, it's great because the whole family gets involved. These huge amounts of leaves will be wonderful to start a compost pile. I highly recommend that you start a compost pile, but that's for another talk. We'll move on. Here's one of my favorite pictures that I was able to find. And this is a winter scene of deciduous trees, a lineup adjacent to probably a driveway. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but doesn't the picture look gorgeous with these deciduous trees? How beautiful and stately they are in the wintertime. Deciduous trees do offer a gentle structure and a sense of permanence. That's something that we love to see. If to have trees in your yard allows for us to think of a permanent spot. Without leaves, the trees should show how graceful or strong the trunks and branches appear. Winter is also the best time to prune your trees. So here's another tip. When pruning your trees, it's easier to visualize the correct structure of a tree in the wintertime when the leaves are gone. Don't you love this? I think it's a great picture. Here is a great picture, also another one of a location in Atlanta. This place is called the Wren's Nest House, Nest, N-E-S-T house. And it is the house of an author named Joel Chandler Harris, who wrote Brer Rabbit. It is in Atlanta, and you'll notice that there are a couple very large trees very close to the house. Well, older Southern historical sites often have ancient and large trees planted around their homes. Deciduous trees permit the sun to warm the house in the wintertime, and they also provide shade to the house during the summer. This saves on electric and gas heat and air conditioner bills. Now we're going to go and I'm going to cite a few different deciduous trees that I love, that I highly recommend for people. Depends upon how big your property is. This particular plant is called Parotia persia. Some people pronounce it Parotia, but I call it Parotia persia. And on your left, you'll notice the gorgeous golden and orange tones of the fall leaves. This tree is a member of the witch hazel family, and you'll see on the right-hand side, gorgeous, really pretty dark pink flowers that eventually turn into other tones of white and yellow, depending upon how old the tree is. But it's a member of the witch hazel family, and it blooms in early February. It's hard to believe that something actually blooms in early February, but this tree does. It only matures to 15 feet tall, and it gets to be about 12 to 15 feet wide altogether, but it's not a fast-growing tree. The male flowers are very showy, and this pink that you see will turn into a scarlet color. Some of them turn orange, as I said before, or yellow, but it does very well in smaller landscape properties. My second tree that I love is an unusual one, but it can be found in nurseries all around. Maybe not necessarily the big box stores, but in good quality nurseries. This is called the hawthorn tree. Its Latin name is Crataegus estivalis, and it also flowers in February. The flowers come out and in big clusters, grouping of clusters. It looks like it's in the crabapple family. I live in Milton, and we have lots of crabapples in our area still, even old ones. And it's beautiful to see the old homesteads that do have the crabapples. Well, this is probably in the same family, a distant family, because it too develops red fruits, or red berries, and it also has the same kind of clusters of flowers. The red berries are great for the birds that will eat them in the fall and winter. The one thing that you need to be aware of is the fact that they have very thorny branches. Birds and bees do love this tree. It's a great protection tree for the birds, and for the bees love it because the white clusters are very, very sweet to the bees. We're going to go to the next slide, which talks about trees grown for their bark. I'm going to stay on this slide for a little bit, and I've only cited 5 pictures altogether. You'll notice on the left that there are a total of 14 different tree names altogether, and they're all very tried and true here in Georgia. By the way, I did not select any plants that weren't tried and true for Georgia, so just be aware that these are all recommended trees and plants for the state of Georgia. Different areas of Georgia will have different times of bloom. Coastal South is usually before we have, we're here in the Piedmont area in the Atlanta region. And then of course the mountains are much different also because they're usually later than any other area within the state. The coral, we'll talk about the coral bark maple first because it's the upper left-hand corner. I love the coral bark maple, and it is a slow-growing, smaller tree, which is known for its coral bark color. The coral bark color doesn't really show up until winter, much like that of some other trees and shrubs that are known for their beauty of their bark. A great example of a four-season plant, it is hardy and requires very little maintenance. That's always nice to hear. Place it in a sheltered, dapple shaded area in your garden. Pictured in this slide also are the Natchez crepe myrtle, known for, then that's just beneath the coral bark maple. That's known for its smooth, deep cinnamon colored bark. It gets huge too. So if you do buy one of those, make sure that you realize that this thing is going to get gigantic. But it's known for its deep cinnamon colored bark that actually flakes off and exfoliates in time, the older it gets. It's beautiful and it's extremely low maintenance. The most important thing with any crepe myrtle is to make sure when it's younger to start pruning it and keep it pruned so it has selective air circulation throughout the middle of their trunks, because those trunks, as you can see in this picture, get quite humongous. The upper right-hand corner is what's called a prunus. Okay, this is a special one called Okame, O-K-A-M-E, as the cultivar. But prunus is the genus for cherry and plum trees. Cherry trees grow very well in this area, a little bit better than plum trees. Plum trees like to have colder winters than what we provide. But cherry trees are very prolific in this area, and there's a few different types of cherry trees that bloom either early, mid, or late blooming. Actually, there are fall bloomers as well for cherry trees, but none of them have this most gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, deep mahogany color bark that, to me, it looks like a piece of raw silk, dark maroon raw silk with the lines of the threads running through. It's just pretty. The bottom middle one is a picture is of a river birch, okay? And that everybody knows has exfoliating bark. It just keeps exfoliating all the time. River birches can be very difficult because they're a little messy with their leaves and they do drop their smaller twigs. The most important thing with the river birch is to site it by the river. It's called river birch for a reason, because it requires a lot of water and the root system is very shallow, much like that of a pine tree or a dogwood. And finally, the one on the far right that almost looks like it's camouflage material is called the lacebark elm. It has a gray, green, and orange mottled combination of colors, and I think it's beautiful. Elm trees in the past have had the Dutch elm disease. We don't seem to have much of that problem in our area, but very few people are planting elm trees because of the fact that the Dutch elm disease has been very, very prevalent, especially in the north and central states. There are a couple different kinds of elms. This one is called the lacebark elm, and it is of Chinese origin, but you can find it, and you just have to be aware of the fact that hopefully there are no other elm trees near it. So it does take a while for it to grow. You have to be very patient with that one. There are other beautiful barks that I wanted to mention that I want you to look into that you'll love. The paperbark maple, which is much like the river birch in that it exfoliates its bark on a very regular basis. There's another one called the snake bark maple, which I couldn't find an excellent picture, so I didn't put that in, but I do encourage you to take a look at that. Another one is called the Stewartia, which is a great smaller tree that grows maximum 15 to 20 feet high and is next to no maintenance. You don't even have to prune it back, hardly ever. There's a wonderful, the next one is that I liked so much that I have on my property is called yellowwood. This is a very old-fashioned tree that is hard to find in many respects. It's kind of known as a pass-along plant, but it's neat because of the fact that it's a native within the state of Georgia, and it also provides yellow wood if you just scratch the bark on the top. It has gorgeous pendant flowers that are about 5 to 6 feet, 5 to 6 inches in size in the springtime, in the early spring, and it's a nice bright yellow color. They're known as catkins. The sycamore tree is found more often up north in Central Plains area and even out west. It has beautiful bark as well. And the sycamores they're called the plane tree, Plane. Their first name for its Latin two names is Planus, Planus. I love the American dogwood. I can't express that enough. However, I do not plant American dogwoods because of the fact that they usually don't take very well. When you buy a dogwood from any kind of nursery, very often it's a hit or miss. It's 50-50. You may or may not be successful with it. For those that have been successful, I love to see their blooms in the springtime. I happen to have a Kousa, Kousa dogwood on my property. And I love that one because it blooms 1 month after the time of regular dogwoods and native dogwoods in our forests. There is one evergreen that it's only semi-evergreen called the lacebark pine, which is really a neat one. I want you and encourage you to take a look at that one. And finally, one of my favorite trees that I've known for a long time and enjoyed is the beech tree, which you will find, Beech, which you will find in forests. Beech trees keep their little leaves on for a very, very long time, even past the time that oak trees, before they lose them. They usually don't lose their foliage until about January. And by February, they're starting to grow their new growth of their leaves. So that's it for trees at this point in time. I do love trees. And as I said, trees provide permanence. The next topic is about winter blooming shrubs. Now, I've given you two different loropetalums that are just fun to have. There's so many different types of loropetalums, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But truthfully, winter blooming shrubs are probably the most useful workhorses in your garden. Any type of shrub, whether it's deciduous or evergreen, is nice because of the fact that they often have variegated foliage. They may have different kinds of stripes or spots on them, or marbling of the yellow and white together. So there's such beauty in shrubs, and there's so many different sizes and cultivars for each type of shrub. This particular one that we're looking at with the loropetalum is nice because of the fact that there are probably 50 or 60 different types of cultivars at this point in time. Everything from the little pixies, which are no more than 12 inches around in a little teeny clump, to regular old-fashioned loropetalums, which can grow up to 20 feet if you don't decide to cut them back. I do think that loropetalums should be cut back because they usually have a spring bloom, an early spring bloom. As you see on the left, the Chinese fringe flower, it's a great cultivar with great big, huge blossoms, gorgeous pink colors, and a very nice maroon tone. There are also loropetalums that are very green oriented. The one on your right is called Jazz Hands, and it's a new hybrid. I believe that's a Southern Living collection. And it has such wonderful mottled variegation of pinks and maroon and green and cream colored. It's a fun one to have, and it's a great focal point to cite. One of my absolute favorites, and I'm going to say this over and over again in this talk, but I do love the fragrant tea olive. This is an old-fashioned plant that's been around for a long time. It is an evergreen, and it is very low maintenance for the most part. You can cut it back if you want to, but you need to be sparing with it because it is a slower grower. It blooms anytime, believe it or not, in the opposite months between September through April, much like the rosemary. It has beautiful, fragrant, white, small flowers. You can walk by it just like you do gardenias in the summertime, and you'll know instantly that it's a tea olive that's in bloom. At maturity, it does grow to about 20 feet. The regular common tea olive grows to about 20 feet tall by about 6 feet wide, but it is slow growing and about 6 inches per year. Some varieties can be shorter. They do have compact ones and they have almost stunted ones. You can prune it into a small tree and espaliate it if you want to, or you can even hedge it. It is deer resistant, folks. And if you're one of those groups that have to be aware of deer, this is a great one to have. It is zone 7 through 9 only, and you only have to fertilize it once a year in the spring after it stops flowering with an acidic fertilizer. There's another type of tea olive, and I don't have a picture for this, that I have in my own yard that looks like a holly bush. It is compact, and it's called Osmanthus heterophyllus, and it's known as the holly osmanthus. It has a variegated leaf to it, and it is beautiful and extremely slow growing. I have it in my front property on my sidewalk, right off my sidewalk area on the way to the front door, welcoming people. Easy to deal with, and there's nothing to do other than make sure it stays well watered. It's in semi-shade, morning sun, afternoon shade, and that's the way most tea olives operate. Tea olive is known as the osmanthus. Here's a particular line of shrubs that almost everybody who is a Southerner grew up with. Camellias. Camellias provide that punch of color for the winter time when you least expect it. They are classically known as a Southern evergreen. And some people pronounce camellias camellias. I love that. I love that expression. It produces joy to so many people. You see in these 3 pictures the variety of color that the flowers have, but there's so many choices. There's a wonderful camellia society that is from southern Georgia, down at Fort Valley, Georgia, that I've been to the location where they have every single type of camellia. Mind you, camellias came from Japan and China, but they are very much at home in the Southern garden. They're known as the rose in winter. We're going to talk about camellias a little bit because people do love them so much. Here are some characteristics and growth requirements that I came across, and I wanted to share that with you. We have mostly white, pink, or red flowers. There's some that even are kind of on the lavender side, but they change. Very often the color of the flowers change. They are drought tolerant once they're established. They are evergreen, as I said before, deer resistant, and they do like partial sun. You need to make sure that they're in very good organic, well-drained soil. And the soil must be slightly acidic. As I said before, you need to fertilize them once a year, sometimes even twice, depending upon whether or not it's a rebloomer. And always prune only after they bloom. If you prune before they bloom, you're not going to have the bloom. If you prune several months after they bloom, you may still not have the bloom, because just like azaleas and many other southern plants, they set up their bloom almost a full year in advance. Viburnums are like that as well. You fertilize, as I said, in the spring. No summer feeding is required. Once you finish with the springtime, usually you're scot-free with the camellias. Now, there's 2 types of camellias that we have in this area. The first one I'm going to talk about is on the left, and it's called Camellia japonica. Japonica just means that it came from Japan, basically. Anytime you see japonica, that second word from Latin is the fact that it's usually from Japan, or it was found in Japan originally. Japonica camellias generally grow 6 to 12 feet high and wide, and as they grow, they mature slowly. Camellias, as I said, came from China and Japan, and most are hardy, surviving temperatures as low as 0 degree Fahrenheit. Believe it or not, they're extremely hardy. There are 3 different seasons of bloom that occur with japonicas. The first one is early, in anywhere from October, the end of October, around Halloween, to December. Very often you'll find, if you're living in the coastal South, that they will be blooming earlier. The mid-season is January through February, and the late season is March through April. Every once in a while, if it's in a protected spot, you may see a large, older camellia that's blooming as late as early May. But that depends on which part of the South you live. Flower sizes range from 2 to, believe it or not, 5 inches. I have seen 5-inch plants, and they're gigantic and beautiful. And they're, once you cut them, the flower, of course, only lasts a couple days, but it's so fun to take your camellias and float them in your bird bath and then take a picture of them. They do require well-drained soil, rich in organic material on an annual basis. It's very important that you make sure you give them more organic material. Such is true for most flowering shrubs and perennials. They do need extra good quality organic material in order to keep producing the flowers. It's hard work making flowers. And they also require proper pruning. They prefer a semi-shade environment. The other type on the right-hand side is the Camellia sasanqua. And the sasanqua camellias have smaller flowers, but they tolerate more sun. They aren't as finicky with their soil, and their bloom times are from September through January. Most of the time you'll see them in bloom in October through early December in our Atlanta area. Depends upon the selection, however. They're drought tolerant, and once they're established, and they make excellent hedges, screens, and I've seen them on walls being espaliered and just delightful. Because they're evergreen, you can see that pop of the shiny glossy leaf, and the foliage is beautiful year round. This one is called the Harry Lauder's walking stick. That's its common name. It's known as the contorted filbert also because it's a member of the filbert family, which actually grows filberts. But Harry Lauder's walking stick has been grafted, so you'll probably never see any filberts on it. The picture on your left shows its beautiful, unusual twisted form. It's important that you remind yourself when you're able to, once it gets to be a large size, that it does need to be pruned judiciously to keep that form and structure. It's very ornamental. Very often you'll find Harry Lauder's walking sticks in Japanese gardens or in a corner of a yard, and your eye gets attentive to that area because it's such a focal point. The plant can grow up to 15 feet high and about 10 feet wide. So judicious pruning is very, very important as an element. As I said before, the plants are usually grafted because it's hard to grow a Harry Lauder's walking stick without having to. And they do have suckers at the base. When a plant has basal suckers, it means that it's in the fruit family or a fruit and nut family, just like maple trees have suckers at the bottom. Crepe myrtles are also in the same family. To the right, you'll see the beautiful pendulous flowers that also called catkins that drape down all over. It's just mystifying. It looks like a person has put their arms out and has all these different sequins flowing down their arms. It's beautiful. Whoop, I went backwards. Here is another favorite of mine, and I've already talked about it, red and yellow twig dogwoods. This is a great, gorgeous picture of the combination of red and yellow twig dogwoods, which you rarely see. You will find that the dogwoods themselves, as I said before, these twig dogwoods are actually deciduous shrubs. They have beautiful flowers, leaves in the fall, but the big show is really a combination in the fall with the bright yellow or red foliage, and in the winter. As it gets colder, the twigs and branches become much more discerning in brighter red and brighter yellow. They have now compact versions of these dogwoods as small as 3 feet, but they can grow on their own up to 12 feet and about 10 feet wide. They can get extremely large. I recommend that if you don't have deer around you to help prune, because they will naturally go to your red and yellow twig dogwoods to chomp on them, and that's fine. But if you don't have any deer around, you do need to cut them back on an annual basis. Let them help you for once. If they're going to eat something, let them help you. I do recommend also that you cut to almost to the ground in the spring to make new growth happen, because they're very prolific growers. They grow fairly quickly. Here are 4 more very nice and very different four-season shrubs that I recommend for you to try. The first one I'm skeptical about, but I know many, many master gardeners and friends who have the Daphne odora. It's a beautiful shrub. It gets it, and it only handles the temperate climate in zone 7 and 8. It grows very slowly, and it's known for its pervasive fragrance. And you will know that particular fragrance too. It's none like any other, but it does have a reputation for dying all of a sudden. You'll turn around and you'll notice that it's dying on its own. It needs, most importantly, air around the base of its roots. Believe it or not, it's one of the few plants that requires that air circulation around the base of its roots. So make sure that there's nothing congesting it, just like too much mulch or too many fall leaves. It is a beautiful plant, however, and it's worth a try. My policy is I try, if I can't grow something the first time, I will try it the second and third time. And if finally by the third time, if it doesn't grow, then it wasn't meant to be in my yard. The next one on the top in the middle is called Aucuba, A-U-C-U-B-A. It is a very old-fashioned plant that grows extremely slowly, often known as what they call a pass-along plant. You can take cuttings of that, put it into water for a month or so, and it will develop roots and grow. It will grow very slowly for you in the water as well until you get it into the ground, but it still is a slow but sure growing evergreen. It's dependable, and it grows in the shade. So the wonderful variegated foliage and the mottled polka dots are wonderful to have in a shady environment because they point that foliage as a focal point to you. There's lots of new cultivars of Aucuba as well. The middle bottom picture is one of witch hazel flowers. Now, witch hazel is a neat one. The first Latin word is hamamelis, H-A-M-A-M-E-L-I-S, and it grows slowly, but it has great fall foliage color. It does lose its leaves, and it's known for its unusual flower clusters in the winter. These clusters that you see are yellow. Often you'll find ones that are orange and yellow or bright red, scarlet and yellow. It's kind of a neat plant. It too is a very low maintenance plant. But the flower clusters are really neat because it blooms in the wintertime, usually around January in our Atlanta area. I love the witch hazel because it is so easy to grow and it's not fussy. The same is true for the next one, which is one of the reasons why I included this one. I love forsythia. Everywhere I've lived, I've had a forsythia bush in the East Coast as well as the Midwest. It grows very well for you, and Southerners consider this particular shrub a real staple because it is easy to grow and dependable. You can take cuttings of this. You can actually cut the branches before they start to flower and bring them inside and see them flower in your vase for a few weeks before the forsythia bush actually even starts to bloom. It develops yellow flower clusters that appear in the late winter to early spring, depending upon the cultivar. Most of the time, you consider the forsythia, much like the Aucuba, as a pass-along plant. There's many times where I have gone from house to house and I've taken some cuttings or taken pieces of some of my plants, rooted them and put them into the next house because I love the beauty of them. And it also gives fond memories of whoever gave it to me or where my previous house was. Other plants that weren't shown that I really appreciate in the wintertime, I would like to verbally mention to you. Winter honeysuckle is one of my favorites. It's all the way in the back part of my property. It's very woody and it has next to no maintenance involved. It is under part shade in my dry shade area in a foresty section in the very back part of the property. It's called Lonicera fragrantissima because it is very fragrant. Now, when you say honeysuckle, people think, oh, that's scary because honeysuckle, generally the vine, is extremely invasive. This is not an invasive plant and actually will send just a couple roots out here and there to make new plant babies that I've given away to other people. But I love it because in the January and into early February, it has about 6 to 8 weeks of a flower that just is so fragrant. Tiny little flowers. You can also take cuttings of that a few weeks before it's ready to bloom and put that in water as well. I like Mahonia. Now, not all Mahonia, the original Mahonias that have been around have become very invasive in forest areas here in Georgia. But there's a new one that's a soft leaf version that is really neat. They all develop a great yellow flower that bloom anywhere between January through March. There's even some that have a variegated foliage to it. They're very low maintenance, and it's known also as the grape holly. In Ohio, where we were very successful in growing that. And those grapes, they look like little grapes, are very edible. Some people make grape holly jelly, old-fashioned things to do, but it's delicious. It's really a fun thing to do with your kids. I have two more that I wanted to talk about. One is called Leucothoe, Leucothoe, and there are very many different types of varieties that have interesting leaf colors and combinations. Leucothoe does well. It does okay in this area. It does best in the coastal South because it likes to have a little bit more sandy soil. It's not that fussy. If you get it established in that first year, you've got it for good. It's a good foundation plant, and it has, as I said before, nice leaf color that changes from spring to summer through fall. The Japanese plum yew is also one that I've had in several different houses. I really like this plant because there's next to nothing to do with this one. This one is a slow-growing, spreading evergreen shrub that requires only a teeny bit of maintenance. It has short and soft needles that and prefers afternoon shade. It is also very deer resistant. It can handle having leaves underneath it, on top of it, having plants intrude upon its own area and still come out smelling like a rose, so to speak. It's got a very dark needle to it, so it's a nice contrast with other evergreens that you have. I have my Japanese plum yew next to my Hinoki dwarf false cypress. Now we're going to discuss, speaking of evergreens, we're going to discuss winter evergreen choices. I've chosen 4 different groupings: the hollies, the cypress, the junipers, and the spruces. And I have examples of 1 or 2 of each. There's a lot of evergreen choices, and evergreens do very well in the Georgia Piedmont area, as they do well in other parts of the United States. But evergreens do take center stage in the winter without any competition of deciduous trees. Don't you love that picture? It's all evergreens. I have been to different botanical gardens where they have different sections totally devoted towards evergreen shrubs and trees, and it's so nice because it's very serene and peaceful to look at. Plus, evergreens, generally speaking, have very little maintenance to deal with once they're established. You'll notice in that picture, there's probably about 15 different types of evergreens altogether. As I said before, we're only going to talk about a couple. Evergreens of all sizes are 4-season plants without question, and they don't have that competition with the deciduous trees or the summer flowering annuals, or those 3-season perennials that sprout up all over the place. So you need to choose carefully where you wish to plant them on your property, because they will be visible all year round, like it or not. So make sure you spend time in that design and planning element before you plant the very first evergreen. There's a picture of our Nellie Stevens holly. That's not my holly. I have several still left on my property. After a while, Nellie Stevens get very old and large, and you need to really chop them back a lot. But a Nellie Stevens is a great plant because of the fact that it can be used as a hedge, as a screen, which is what we used it for on our driveway area, or as just an ornamental shrub. They do get large, as I said, and they can grow up to 25 feet tall if you're not careful. If you don't make it a point to prune them carefully, every couple years. They are medium to fast growers and dependable. They have nice red berries for 5 to 6 months in the year, which is a wonderful thing. The birds know when to pick those berries. And look at the picture on the right. Aren't they gorgeous, those red berries? It's a wonderful thing to also to have Nellie Stevens with the berries and the glossy foliage brought into your house before Christmas to adorn your mantle. Here are two pictures of, and it's the same picture actually, of a golden Oakland holly. The Oakland holly looks very much like that osmanthus that I was talking about, the small shrub, but this golden Oakland holly does get a little bit bigger. It has a softer leaf. They're pointy, but they don't hurt as much as, say, the Nellie Stevens. There's lots of choices with variegated hollies nowadays. They've done a whole lot of cultivar growing. You need to plant where it will stand out by itself. So if you buy one, it's usually a little bit more pricey, but you only will buy one, and it's known as a standalone plant. This golden Oakland holly is generally pretty slow growing. Here are the Hinoki cypress. There's so many different types of Hinoki cypress. Some of them are called false Hinoki cypress, some are real, some are dwarf, some are not. So make sure you do your homework before you make a choice. Some Hinoki cypress become 20 to 25 feet in height and 15 to 25 feet in width, believe it or not. I love cypress because of the fact that they're delicate foliage. When you look at the close-up picture to the right, you'll notice that it's a very attractive, light and feathery foliage that gets used very often for foundation planting as well as group planting on the property. They're beautiful on a hillside. They do prefer most of the time in the shade, but there are some that can handle sun as well. My dwarf false Hinoki cypress is actually a more chartreuse color, like what you see by these two slides, but it gets morning sun, so it actually stays more green than it does chartreuse, unfortunately for me. I didn't realize that there was as much sun as when I planted it. I didn't expect it to be. And this particular one is slow growing. This is a blue deodar cedar. Now, blue spruce, regular spruce does not grow very well. Yes, there's one straight ahead of me that I'm looking at, and it's a great plant. Deodar cedar does grow very quickly, so you have to be aware of that. When it's younger, it is usually a blue-gray color. As it gets older, it turns more green. It's prized for its foliage color, and it remains upright and stately. If you choose the dwarf compacta size, that one grows to only 15 feet. Now that's a dwarf, so don't be misled by the word dwarf. And compacta means that it's compact, which means that its leaves and its branches are closer in body to itself. But it does grow, the dwarf compacta grows to 15 feet, slowly but surely. There's also another one that I like a lot called the pendula prostrata, which drapes over rocks or walls, and it has a wonderful effect to have that blue-green and gray foliage draping over walls and rocks, as though it was meant to just live there forever. Finally, we're going to talk about junipers. Junipers are not my favorite because I think that they're overused in the landscape. And landscapers love junipers because, number one, they're cheap. They're great plants to have for a foundation when you have a brand new house because they look beautiful in the very beginning. They're small, they're compact, and they look simplistic. The beauty about junipers is the fact that, first of all, there's all different types of junipers, but they're a tough plant. It's very hard to kill a juniper until it gets very old. They tolerate drought and they'll live in almost any kind of soil. They come in many forms, as you can see on the left versus the right, and they can handle full sun conditions as well as shade. I like the skyrocket juniper, and I've had a couple different types of skyrocket junipers, but they do require a lot of pruning on a regular basis. So if you don't want to spend a lot of time pruning, then be aware of that. You'll notice behind the junipers that there are dwarf hinoki cypresses in the picture to the right. On your left is a very nice cultivar, and it's called the Blue Star juniper. It does keep its habit in a nice clumpy, compact way, and it doesn't grow as fast. It also has tiny needles. Be careful, some of those needles are uncomfortable to touch, but you usually don't have to touch a juniper very often. Finally, we have the spruce family. Now on the left, we have a grouping of all the different types of spruce that we see: red, black, white, blue, one called Sitka, which you find in Alaska and in the Northwest Territories, Engelmann spruces, Brewer spruces, and it reminds you of Christmas trees because spruces are often used as excellent Christmas trees. Be aware that most spruces get very, very large. You can see the one in the middle, the Sitka spruce, does grow up to 200 feet. Spruces have beautiful needles that are not pointy and hurting you, and they also have cones. The picture to the right is called the dwarf Alberta spruce. It's known as, its name, spruce's first Latin name is Picea, P-I-C-E-A, and that one's called Picea glauca, Albertiana. It was named after King Albert. Most of the Alberta spruces are pyramidal, which means they're in the shape of a cone, a large cone or pyramid, and they're shaped with very stiff needles. They won't hurt you, but they're very stiff and short needles. This spruce is used often in Georgia as it is a good foundation plant. It slowly grows to 6 to 8 feet tall and 4 to 5 feet wide in about 30 years. But there are some dwarf Alberta spruces that I've seen grow almost that size, 10 years. If it's in a happy place, it will grow much quicker. It does need a protected place from winds and any kind of reflected sunlight that reflects off the windows of your house. There's one that's called Tiny Tower, a new cultivar that only grows 4 to 6 feet tall that I highly recommend. It's also very pest resistant, and it doesn't lose its needles from within, much like many other spruces. I found with dwarf Alberta spruces, if they don't have total full sun coverage from front to side and back, very often it will start to die out about 2/3 of the way down the shrub itself and look pretty ratty. They are, like most evergreens, all spruces are deer resistant, so be aware of that. There are certain evergreens also that I didn't have time to show you that were really meant for the winter months. One of them is called Nandina, which I'm looking at another Nandina from my fellow master gardener's house with beautiful shiny red berries. Hers are about 8 feet tall. They've been around for a long time. I'm looking also to my left at the Savannah holly, which also has beautiful red berries. Here it is in November, and the red berries are already showing. The birds will get to eat the berries all during the course of the winter, late fall into the winter, and they will know when it's time to eat them and not before that point in time. There's also American hollies, which I highly recommend for you to look into, that grow very well and very simply. That is a standard holly that we use throughout the whole United States. You can find them in native forests. And there's also some pine trees and shrubs that are great. I want you to look into the idea of putting some small compact pines onto your property and develop an area that has just a handful of evergreens. You can plant bulbs, and only bulbs that come up spring, fall, summer, and winter. And just have an evergreen and bulb section of your garden. It's beautiful when you do that. Also, finally, there's 2 different types of magnolias that I want to recommend. And I'm looking at a southern magnolia to my right. In my own home, I have a little gem magnolia, which is a smaller version of the southern magnolia. Southern magnolias get very large. Granted, they grow slowly, but they continue to grow until they're about 75 to 90 feet tall. In our area where we are responsible as master gardeners for one particular historic home, a southern magnolia was taken down that was placed and planted, according to the records, in 1847. And it finally came down about 5 years ago because of the fact that it had been hit by severe winds and lightning. It was beautiful and gigantic, but magnolias are messy plants because their evergreen leaves do not decompose readily, so they're hard. Now it's time to turn to winter perennials, and I promised you that this would be the last one of the grouping of plants that I wanted to talk about. I love perennials because of the fact that there's so much variety in perennials. They're not as large, generally speaking, as any tree or shrub, and you can transplant them readily in the fall and even into early winter if you like. This picture is one of hellebores, and we're going to talk about 3 different kinds of hellebores in a moment. They've become a favorite of winter gardeners in the past 10 years or so. A lot of it has to do with a couple of the location nurseries in our Atlanta area that have really gone crazy with developing new cultivars. There's about 20 different species, and they belong to the buttercup family. When you look at their flower, very often it's a 5-petal leaf, 5-petal flower that, generally speaking, that looks like a buttercup as it gets larger. Anything that has a 5-petal means that it's in the distant family of roses. The first one that I've chosen 3 different species to show you, and then you'll see the pictures. The one on the upper left-hand side is called the hellebore niger, and that's known as the Christmas rose. Its flower is pure white. It reaches only 9 to 12 inches tall. None of the hellebore plants get that tall, so it's a great understory and interplant type of specimen to use. The hellebores do like lime. This is a very important feature. They do like lime and organic matter to retain their moisture and their pH requirements. The Christmas rose does bloom during Christmas. That's why it's called that. It has a beautiful, very, very dark leaf, and niger means black. So the leaves are almost black in tone, a very, very dark green, almost black. And there's different varieties also that have black stems. The ones the one on the lower left and the lower right are what's called hellebore orientalis, orientalis, Orientalis. And that's known as the common Lenten rose. It's the most commonly grown choice. They reseed prolifically. They come in many shades of cream, light green, maroon, purple, and even brown tones. And you can see how attractive they are. They're wonderful cultivars that have been coming out in the past 20 years or so. Their flowers last a very long time, and they're very hardy. Deer and rabbits do avoid chewing on these plants, so be aware of that. However, be careful because the common hellebore orientalis does reseed itself prolifically. They do tolerate dry shade, which is a great thing because not that many plants handle being in dry shade once they're established. And they do best under the canopy of a deciduous forest setting. This plant is poisonous, like a daffodil, and may reseed, as I said. Just be aware of the fact that it has a very strong root system. Your animals, if you have a dog or a cat that goes outside, generally speaking, they're not going to try to taste this one at all. They know, animals do know when a plant is poisonous most of the time. The third one is called, and I don't have a picture of this, is known as hellebore foetidus, Foetidus. Some pronounce it foetidus. It's known as the stinking hellebore. The reason why I brought that up is because it's very different, and it's a real conversation piece. It attracts flying insects early in the season. The foliage smells very unpleasant when it's crushed, but it's an attractive and unusual plant. It's fun to have attractive yet unusual plants. I know I like to collect unusual plants here and there. This is the pulmonaria, and there's two different versions of this pulmonaria. It's known as hepatica also, and it's commonly known as the lungwort plant. It was used in medieval times to treat lung diseases. The plants grow about 12 inches tall, and you'll notice that they're settled amongst leaf material. They usually grow in the shaded forest, and often their leaves are spotted. They're evergreen in the south, and they do well in very fertile soil. Once you get them established, they will spread slowly but surely. The one to the right is called Hepatica americana, and aren't those flowers adorable? Really nice. The flowers last for a pretty long time too. So that's even more of a perk, especially because of the fact in the wintertime, all you see generally are brown. You'll notice on that Hepatica americana that the leaves are brown, greenish, and bright green almost, and a very unusual shape. Next is the very favorite plant that so many people do have that they discover, called creeping phlox or Phlox subulata. It's known by most as either moss pink or creeping phlox, and it is an evergreen native plant. It loves the sun, and it blooms prolifically in the late winter through the early spring. It has a very long bloom time. The choices of color are pink, white, lavender, and even a red tone. Red's hard to find, and I don't usually see that in this area. I have a feeling that the red tone is more pink, that it has changed as time goes on. This plant's really a winner, low maintenance, low growing, and long blooming. There are two ground covers that I'm going to chat about, and one is called Japanese sweet flag, otherwise known as Acorus gramineus. Its foliage is chartreuse, and I know you've seen this here and there, especially in botanical gardens. It grows in large clumps. If it's in the part shade, it stays very chartreuse. If it's in more sun, it's more green. It's your choice to make that decision. I often put a handful of them in containers when I need to have a little bit of filler. It looks like a grass, although it's not really a grass. It's very low maintenance and spreads slowly, and it can handle either wet or dry soil conditions, which is great. I like it in my containers, especially in the winter, as a good filler. To the right, you see the original species of purple ajuga. It's purple leafed. There are several different types that are variegated now with maroon and purple and several shades of green, as well as cream and white. I find that the original species works the best in this area and lasts the longest. It does spread very slowly, just as ground covers do. It's reliable and it's slow growing. It holds up best against the cold and the heat, and it's a wonderful plant to have as a contrast to something like a chartreuse tone or something like a blue-green color, like near the rosemary bush. You provide morning sun and afternoon shade to keep it happy. Now we turn to birds. As I promised, birds of winter are very much an important feature in my own yard. I couldn't omit this topic of birds in the winter interest talk because they're important for a healthy winter garden. Our feathered friends are especially dependent on us to provide 4 essential requirements for them to thrive. Just like other critters, birds do have special needs. There are food, and we have special needs as well, very similarly. Food, water, shelter, and the locations for them to nest. Many southern bird species don't migrate to warmer climates, so be aware of that. And I want you to emphasize the fact that you want to be a steward of the environment. This slide shows 8 different bird species found in Georgia, and I'll go around telling you what they are so you're aware. The first and we'll start from the upper left. The first one is the downy woodpecker at the suet feeder. You'll find with suet feeders that different birds thrive on the suet much more so than others. The downy woodpecker really enjoys the suets, and you have to change that suet once every few weeks. The second one on the left, far left, that's yellow, is called a goldfinch. You'll see goldfinch year-round in our area, and the bright yellow means that it's a male. The third one the one immediately in the middle with the black head is a chickadee, and they're kind of short and squat, but they are cute, and they're around everywhere. I love their black feet. To the right, the top one is the tufted titmouse, and that one also likes different types of seeds, very different than other birds. Far left at the bottom is the not so loved but beautiful blue jay. Blue jays have a reputation of stealing other birds, like bluebirds and robins, eggs to eat. You'll find also that some birds eat other birds. So it's a dog eat dog or bird eat bird world in the nature environment, natural environment. The middle one with the two birds together are a male and female cardinal. It's kind of fun to see both the male and female in a picture like this. You don't see them together very often. And the male does protect the female obsessively, truthfully. They're very talkative birds, and they like to have certain types of feed and seed. The bottom right two pictures are those of the nuthatch and then the brown thrasher. And you'll notice that brown coloration to use as a camouflage. It looks very much, you hardly ever see the brown thrasher in a branch. It's usually in the ground because they're thrashing about literally to find insects amidst the leaves. You should never get rid of all of your leaves in your mulch. And I don't know how anybody could ever get rid of all of them anyway to start with. But it's a great assortment of birds to have in your yard. This is a compilation of what the bird care is all about. As I said before, they require food, they require water, they require shelter, and they require nesting sites or roosting. We'll talk about the food first. The insects, plant parts, and proteins are very important. Insects are protein, and they will eat, birds will eat insects prolifically once they find it. If you have insects in your yard, you may not even know about it. There's lots of worms that they go after. There's all sorts of types of insects that are around even in the wintertime. There are less in the winter, of course, because so many insects life cycle changes and they go down into the ground. The plant parts that birds eat are seeds, nuts, berries, and fruits, and also the plumes from ornamental grass. They need carbohydrates and proteins, much like we need carbohydrates and proteins to survive. Remember that fruiting plants are attractive to birds, or as attractive to birds as they are to the people surrounding them. Some larger birds, as I said before, prey on smaller birds and rodents for their protein. Think about the fact that we have different kinds of eagles and we have different kinds of scary birds that frighten us, but they're not that scary as long as the birds are aware of the size, and they protect themselves very well because of their camouflage. Winter berries and seed pods shouldn't be cut back or eradicated until after birds have the option to eat them. The same is true, as I said before, of the leaves. Don't get rid of every single one of your leaves. You don't have to be that crazy about cleaning up. The assortment of feeders is important as well. For water, we need to offer bird baths of all shapes and sizes. And what a cute picture of the bird bath with those 5 birds, I guess, just cleaning themselves off. They need to have water 365 days a year, 365 days a year, because of the fact that they drink the water and they clean themselves off on a regular basis. Shallow bird baths are better than deep bird baths, and ones that birds can cling onto with their feet without slipping and falling in are even more important. You need to change the water every day if possible, and in order to keep that water from freezing, you need to invest in a small immersion heater. It's easy to do, it's not that expensive, and it really helps the birds an awful lot. As far as shelter is concerned, evergreen shrubs and deciduous trees are the best choices by birds to protect them from their predators. They congregate in deciduous and evergreen plants because they can be hidden much easier. So don't cut them down. Don't cut those plants down if you see any nests. Make sure you're aware of the fact of where the birds are living on your property. The fourth and final area to talk about is nesting sites. Nesting is very important. There are different types of birds nest at different times of the year. I know that bluebirds nest probably 5 times a year, but sometimes less, depending upon the environment and how hot or cold it is. And birds usually look for their nesting sites way before they're even ready to lay their eggs. You hang a nesting or roosting box on sturdy tree branches. You'll notice the one on the far right is a very souped up birdhouse, and it even has a lucite cover, but the cover is wonderful because it provides shelter to the bird when they have the difficult rain or ice storms. You offer self-standing birdhouses of different sizes on your property to attract those birds. Buying a birdhouse with a metal piece around the bird entry hole assures that the larger birds won't take the eggs, so those blue jays won't grab them. Unfortunately, the time commitment couldn't allow the following types of plants, and I wanted to mention this. As I said before, perhaps this will be winter interest plants number 2. And those types of plants are perennial vines, winter bulbs, ferns, winter annuals, veggie gardens, winter tolerant herbs, which I love, ornamental grasses, or winter containers. So the last beautiful pictures I have are of what I call the 3 Bs. When gardeners provide an assortment of year-round sustenance for birds with a variety of feeders or appropriate plant material, they will live close to your home. If you plant it, they will come, believe me. My last statement that I always say in practically every talk, no matter what the original topic is about the 3 Bs. Having birds, bees, and butterflies are the key signals for a healthy environment. You'll have less overall maintenance, your plants will be less pest and disease ridden, and you will be happier by seeing those birds, bees, and butterflies. There's also a 4th bee known as the bat, but people are afraid of bats. Bats are a wonderful type of critter to have around, and you only see them at dusk. So there's really 4 bees, but birds, bees, and butterflies are what people really want in their yard. I wish you a happy winter. I wish you continue enjoyment in your gardens, and I thank you for listening to me. Oh, I missed the last slide. Here are the references that we've looked up about that I've used for my paper and my topics. And there's also a bibliography of the books that I used. It's quite a lot. And who are the Master Gardeners? Well, this is my final statement. The mission of our North Fulton Master Gardeners is to provide a horticulture education, service, and inspiration in our North Fulton community. We have brought garden fair to the community, and every April, except this year, and I think next year, we're also going to have garden fair as just a plant sale, which is what we started it originally in Roswell. We are a wonderful group of people that support demonstration gardens, horticultural scholarships, and children's gardening classes. And we provide garden education through our garden lecture series to the North Fulton communities and by way of our new YouTube channel. Here's a list of the current and future classes. Please read this carefully. They're free classes. And unfortunately, we can't be where you are in person, but here we are virtually. So any information that you have, there is the website right there. Our website is www.nfmg.net. There are community classes galore. And when it's proper and when we feel comfortable about it, we will have in-person community classes again. You can find us on Linktree, on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, the webpage, which I mentioned, and then our new YouTube channel. There's lots of different topics. I want to thank you for coming and being part of my talk, and I enjoy this immensely.